Welcome back, everybody, to the 2022 League of Legends College Championship. I am your host, Dylan MLBD, joined by TJ Command Attack again. And we have replaced RBM. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us any longer. He had to go kick some butt in his tournament. But we brought on a very, very fine replacement. Coach Tyler, welcome to the broadcast, my friend. This is Harrisburg's assistant League of Legends coach. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm going to do my best to try and follow up that stellar desk performance from RBM. He's such a funny dude, man. I had a collegiate stream the other night where we kind of talked about the bracket that was released for top 32, all the controversy between which side is stronger, which side got kind of screwed over. And it was really fun to have RBM kind of make a guest appearance on the stream. He has a very eccentric personality, and it's really cool to see him talk about League. He's very passionate. So I'll do my best to follow in his footsteps, and I'm excited to be here with you guys. Good to see you again, TJ, of course. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, you're going to need to say the word grief a lot. You're going to need to say the word trolling a lot if you want to be able to follow up the performance that RBM was giving us. But no, on a more serious note, we do have a few minutes to fill before the start of our next series because the first series did actually go on for a while, so we don't have too much time to talk. But this second one is arguably the most exciting series that's being streamed today. You know, I say that, and the first series was a very close 3 games, but we do have Michigan up against UOT Esports on this mainstream, twitch.tv/academy. On Unified Live, we have UC Irvine versus St. Clair College. That looks to be a good series. And then one that you talked about earlier, TJ, on Unified 2, we have Bethany Esports versus Converse Esports. Do you guys have any thoughts on these games?
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
definitely excited. Go ahead.
I'm very excited too, actually. I think that there are a few of these games that will actually be kind of close. I actually, in the stream that I did a little while ago, I talked about Bethany versus Converse quite a bit, and the U of T UMich I think is actually closer than a lot of people might think as well. U of T, they're in the East Conference with our team. We played them. I think we played them twice over the course of the regular season, and we played them for obviously top 3. And they're a pretty good team, and they have a lot of flexibility about them. I don't know if you want to go into like each specific team yet, but I think the Bethany Converse series is going to be really exciting to watch. I think it's closer than most people might think. Bethany actually a top 3 team last year, got their best player moved on to TL Academy, so I think they have a lot of big shoes to fill. And going up against Converse is actually a pretty good team, surprisingly. So I think that match is going to be very exciting. On top of the one we're about to watch here on this channel too.
So obviously, I'm also really excited for Bethany Converse. I'll definitely be watching that VOD. But in regards to our series here, it's really awesome that in Collegiate you get to have a bunch of different breadth of what teams stand for. And I know that the U of T guys, they're pretty much a group of friends. Like, they like to hang out. They love talking about League together. They're pretty much like the bros, for lack of like a super term for that one. And so it's really awesome that you can just kind of like, hey guys, we're gonna show up today. We're gonna play some League of Legends. Hopefully we win. We're gonna try our best, and like, if not, I mean, I guess we'll go play some pool later or something, right? Like, how cool would that be, just to hang out with your homies?
I love that mindset. Honestly, I mean, I feel like that is the kind of mindset. You just get a couple of guys who are good at League of Legends. You enjoy being friends together. And I mean, last year, what did they make it to? Top 8? So definitely, I mean, it's a formula that has had success before, and we're going to have to see if they can pick it up, but definitely not an easy round 1 opponent. We have a couple minutes to fill in before the game. So Tyler, I would love to hear your thoughts. Having played in the East Conference against U of T Esports a couple of times, what are your thoughts on that team as a whole and how they match up against Michigan?
Yeah, so U of T actually is a team that never does all that well in the regular season or the East season playoffs. They tend to struggle like quite a lot, but once it comes time for CL finals, maybe their schoolwork is a little bit easier. Their workload is kind of off their hands a little bit. They start to really focus up and bond together for CL finals. They did really well last year, much better than I expected them to, and I think that goes to show how good these guys are when it starts to come in clutch. And I know they have a roster where they actually utilize their sub, Little Frosty, to come in and out depending on what draft they want to do or what champions they want to flex. This team, they really like to flex like certain champions. Like, they'll play Morgana like mid jungle and support, like or they'll play Galio support and mid. Like, they really like to flex like some unique champions to give themselves options to play like Caitlyn Morgana, or that Morgana will just go jungle randomly and they'll just get Jinx with Morgana and an Enchanter, like playing Jinx Lulu or something. I think this team will always pull something out of the hat that they've been practicing that no other team has really gotten the time to play against. And that's the fun thing about watching U of T play. And also, I think their AD carry is actually really good. So I think if majority they're going to play around like Siekomode, and he hopefully can pop off for them because that's kind of a little bit of their win condition, along with having a very playful draft that can get them some small advantages in compositionally.
Now, speaking on Siekomode, I actually played with him in the collegiate combine the other day, and he was a treat to play with. He was communicative. He was always helping out. So I'm also really looking forward to see how he performs today. On the other topic, though, not only do they swap champions everywhere, they're willing to swap lanes. And I think that even further augments the ability to get like some super weird and wacky picks. It's like, I guess we're just gonna play Swain bot today. You haven't played against that. Good luck.
It's gonna be a spicy series for sure, gentlemen. Really fast. Quick predictions.
You want to go first, TJ? I'll pass you the torch.
Yeah, I will go U of T 2-1, but I'm not very solid. Like I think this will go either way.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go UMich 2-0. I think UMich is just like a better team as long as they don't get cheesed, and it's up to U of T to kind of like pull the magic comp out of the hat and find like a good composition that can do well in draft against like the skill deficit that I think that they have.
You heard it here from our big brain analysts. I'm going to go UMich 2-1, but we got to see how this first game unfolds. We still have Grapes. We still have Rebel. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Dylan. Coach Tyler, maybe a little bit of bias. You know, he took down Toronto. He thinks that they're too easy to win. I mean, that's kind of what I got here. But Rebel, I mean, this first matchup that we had was crazy. Went 3 games back and forth all the way around. But this was actually the series that we had our eyes on more in terms of one that can go either way.
This has got to be one of the hardest games to predict in the entire tournament for a number of reasons, because this is 2 talented teams. On one side, you had a top 8 team last year in Toronto that made that upset run to be able to make it to top 8 in the first place by beating Purdue, who was like a favorite to even go past Bethany in last year's games. And on the other side, you have Michigan, who's really been stepping into their own, brought back a lot of players that have been really humongous for them in a number of previous years, and they're looking like a completed team once again that's able to compete with some of the best.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the name of the game here for Michigan. You know, this is a team that, you know, didn't make too much of an impact last year, but it seems like they kind of had pieces kind of moving around all throughout over the past years, and they finally have everybody that they want back together. Shamwwow back to the top lane from ISU last year, have DGMaster back from Korean military service, and now you basically have this infinity gauntlet here for Michigan. The question is, how well can they perform? It's really interesting as well, because these are 2 very strong teams, but they were both write-ins from the committee, which just shows how much of a powerful conference both the North and the East are.
Truly, yeah. You talk about players also coming back to Michigan, which is worth talking about over the course of our series. But Toronto, they had new players in basically 3 roles. They kept their core together in DeafRef and Siekomode, but they have players in all 3 of their other positions that have kind of swapped in and out all together. So the one that we're looking at mostly, and one that's been talked about a little bit, is Oltan, who's a very good jungler for U of T, and has stepped into a new role, being one of the new players on this roster, versus Jouzef, which is we've heard so much about the prodigy that is the Michigan jungler. Even his own team hyped him up on some of the cards that we have, some of the statements that they made before the game. So this jungle versus jungle really will be a lot of what we're paying attention to, because they're 2 very new junglers to the collegiate scene that are apparently electrifying for both squads.
Yeah, and that's cool. Fresh blood here into CLOL onto teams that are both very, very strong and have pretty storied, you know, histories throughout the collegiate, you know, seasons here in League of Legends. And as we enter into the draft for game number 1, it's important to note that, first of all, it is Michigan on the blue side, Toronto on the red side. That's a Mordekaiser ban here, Rebel. That's something that DeafRef really likes to play out there. I'm expecting some spicy picks into the mid lane for Toronto as maybe a sort of avenue to take advantage of throughout the series.
And I know last year, like our desk talked a little bit about it, this really weird swapping that went between DeafRef and their support, who is a Twisted Fate player, and honestly a Twisted Fate main, to be quite frank as well, as they were able to pinch it with it as the one champion that DeafRef didn't have. This season, it feels like DeafRef is filling this, like, I will play anything role, where he will play any champion he can to fill out the composition and to play better into the opposition, to the point where he's even picking Mordekaiser mid lane to be able to counteract. If he's got a good matchup for it, it's a good angle for his team, and they're able to make things happen. So that's that as well. Now, I do also want to point out, these 2 teams played against each other only a handful of weeks ago, and it was a 2-0 for U of T, or 2-1, my apologies, for U of T. And a lot of that was predicated on very early game shenanigans, which is why you're seeing like Kassadin taken off the board. It's not the most popular champion for DeafRef, but this is something he beat them with in 19 minutes only a couple weeks ago. Think of a Kassadin game that you win 8 kills on 19 minutes. Kind of incredible to think about. That's why Michigan, they've done their diligence. They've played this team. They've been there, done that. And now it's time to reap what they've sown.
Yeah, strong mid lane focus here for Toronto as DeafRef garnered 3 bans in the first rotation. And he's not even necessarily the supposed strongest player on this team. We talked about Oltan being incredible. NøticeMeSenpai up in the top lane is a very good carry top laner as well. And I think the biggest piece here for Toronto is their bot laner here in Siekomode, who got them to that top 8 spot last year.
Yeah, Siekomode is an absolute beast in the AD carry position, and especially against DGMaster, who kind of stepped in a little bit later after they got through some of the visa issues. It's the one position that you can rely on, especially getting Jinx for Siekomode. You know their team fighting is going to be predicated completely around the ADC that was able to get them into good positions last year. Now, the interesting piece of this, Omly, you and I have gone over this a number of times. We've seen this team play even in amateur and proving grounds, and the one expectation we had for Omly was this guy's a standard control mage player. This is somebody that we anticipate being in that position. This is not that. This is a LeBlanc, an assassin, wants to put pressure onto Siekomode in the backline, wants to have agency in this mid-to-mid matchup, comfortable saying after those 3 bans that they want to make the move through Omly.
Yeah, Omly, I think, is another star player, one of the most experienced players on this Michigan lineup as well, has been here for a number of years throughout countless iterations of this lineup, and getting onto a playmaker like the LeBlanc, especially with Jouzef on the Lee Sin as well, going to be a lot of agency on him to make a lot of these plays, depending, even no matter what, DeafRef decides to play into him.
And I can appreciate that they go to the Xayah as well as this counter pick into Jinx, because this lethality Xayah has been the response that Jinx is. It was the one response that I think that got come up with by everybody in the world. They're like, okay, this kind of works. And so they've just been battering it as much as they can. And now, slowly over time, things have gone a little bit better. This was the interesting one to me. Not only DeafRef, the potential flex to blue, but it seems a little unlikely. This is likely a DeafRef champion. But this Wukong is something that sticks out to me. I think Senpai has played it a little, but it's possible it goes into the jungle. I've heard a lot about Wukong being a powerful jungle champion potentially, and this might be the angle for it for Oltan. Worst case scenario, no matter what the situation, you got Ball or you've got Galio delivery. You like to see this with Camille in the top lane, you like to see it with Nocturne as well, but Wukong is a very mean champion to throw in as also one of these champions that delivers Nocturne to the backline effectively.
Yeah, I mean, seeing this Wukong come in, okay, had some recent buffs as well, allowing you to dash over the wall with the invisibility, is kind of what has propelled him back into the jungle as a potential pickup. And for Oltan, a player who likes to make a lot of these plays for Toronto, getting some early agency, getting some creative gank paths can be really big up against Jouzef on the Lee Sin. Again, this jungle matchup is so crucial and critical to how we expect these two teams to interact. Headed to the second, the ports are targeted. We see the top catch taken away, which means that Michigan believe that this Galio is indeed headed towards DeafRef.
Indeed. And not to mention, there's a lot of defensive champions being pulled out of the hands of U of T, making sure Blue can't play that defensive role around Siekomode, which he had most of the season. The Akshan ban is also a little weird, expecting that Senpai could pull that out. I know they had it in a couple of games and it went pretty crazy, because Senpai, again, this crazy type damage top lane carry player, to be able to go up against somebody very experienced like Shamwwow, you don't want to give him comfort in the slightest. So now it's a question of what do they have in the back pocket for defense. I know Braum was there and Thresh was the other one I was thinking. Right. Blue, I think, is more of a Braum player than a Thresh player, and so opts for that one here is a bit of defense. You got a well-rounded team composition. You're missing a little magic damage, is my one complaint, but I'm sure they could fill that in when the time comes, whether it's Senpai who's going to grab that up or whether that's going to come through from Oltan in the jungle.
Yeah, and in terms of things that you can maybe see Toronto pull out here, Oltan plays some AP pickups like the Gragas in the middle lane, and on the other side for Senpai, one of his most played champions is that Akali. Has not been banned or picked throughout just yet, so if the right matchup ends up coming through, Shamwwow maybe, oversees this just a little bit with the blind pick, like this Gangplank, will be a potential angle. Not 100% sure. For the side of Michigan, they round out their composition as well with that Rakan for Somä, with that lovers duo in the bottom lane.
And you know that Shamwwow likes his Camille's and he likes his Gangplanks as two of the main champions that he likes to play over and over and over again inside of the lane. And who would have possibly thought, man, it is the Ornn going into the top side, and so it's going to be the Wukong jungle for Oltan in this one. That's the ball delivery. Again, they're lacking magic damage, but they are putting a lot of their chips into both a consistent, very heavy CC-focused teamfight to be able to load into Siekomode. They're putting their cards into the Siekomode basket, which I think is reasonable because he's a talented player. But again, you have the stumbling block of Jinx falls behind, your team fight doesn't come to fruition. You got to wait for scaling to come through, and it buys time for Michigan to get into their late game, and their late game is very mean. They were taking games on ISU on the predication that they were taking late games, and they were the ones team fighting, which, if that's not a statement to you, then go watch some ISU games inside of amateur or collegiate, because they would take games to 35 minutes every game if they could, because they have a lot of faith for that, which speaks kind of mounds to what Michigan's been able to do this split with this roster.
And we'll see the Redbirds a little bit later today, but right now the focus is on the Wolverines. Michigan, with a very interesting composition. They have Jouzef on the Lee Sin, will be able to make some plays, but the scaling is there as well. DGMaster on the Xayah might go for the lethality build, but still will be a decent damage dealer and a good matchup into the Jinx. And then you have Omly, and then you have Shamwwow as well. On these late game damage dealers can go for, you know, sort of assassinations, and also a decent amount of consistent DPS. And so for the side of Michigan, it's very interesting to see what they want to do. A lot of lanes to potentially play for. Jouzef is going to have a lot of different options here in this early game.
To me, U of T have enough of a composition that's kind of self-sufficient in terms of setting up its team fight, right? Like, you have Ornn ultimates to drop, you've got Galio ultimates to drop, you've got Wukong to get in the backline, you've got Braum ultimates if you want to start on like a pick and like force them to come back into a fight of some kind to, you know, to save somebody or to prevent them from going down. That you have space to work with Siekomode. Instead, to me, what I'm looking at is, how does U of T stop Omly, stop Jouzef from putting damage into Siekomode, because that's your carry threat. Oltan can do a lot of damage, DeafRef has a little bit of damage in the Galio, but this truly is, in my mind, just a Jinx carries us composition coming out. So that means Omly from the get-go on this LeBlanc was an incredible selection for being able to assassinate a single target, a load of single target damage in this mid lane for Omly to try to drop Siekomode in fights as fast as possible. So again, that dive is what I'm really paying attention to. Can Omly find assassinations? Because if he can, all of a sudden, this U of T composition, yes, they've got a lot of CC, they've got a little bit of damage, but probably not enough to win a full-out team fight scrap with Michigan, especially with 5 players, even if you trade LeBlanc for Jinx in the long term. So I'm keeping my eye on that. How much is Omly able to make one of those veterans on Michigan, like you were attesting to, that potentially could step up huge for this roster in game number 1?
Yeah, it is a rather one-dimensional composition that Toronto have set up. It is a lot of Jinx carry, and you know, this is definitely something that they are comfortable with, and something that they can execute on. So for Michigan, I'm expecting a lot of attention down towards this bottom lane in what is going to be such a great matchup between these two teams. I mean, these teams are just so closely matched. As you said, Rebel played just a couple of weeks ago in UPL. They both finished in that 9th to 12th spot in terms of the standings, and I mean, and these are both also committee teams that were written in that didn't automatically qualify. So the committee knows that these two teams were both worthy enough to make it into the top 32, and what better of a way to start off than a matchup against each other.
Kind of incredible that we had a roll of 2 of our voting teams playing against one another as well, as the eventuality potentially to play UST in the end as well. So there's that as well. We get our second game in a row where one of our favorites of the entire tournament is waiting them on the opposite side. If they were to win through their first round, I'm not going to take that away from their opponent either. But we're here right now for specifically this series, and there's a lot of ways that Michigan, I think, have set themselves up for success. Although, I'll give it this. For collegiate teams, a lot of times I have problems with compositions, especially teams that like don't necessarily have this incredibly complex coaching structure or don't have the resources from their school to have analysts or anything like that, is their compositions sometimes get a little bit fanatical or they get crazy because they're drafting for individual lanes, they're drafting for comfort, and they're not fitting their pieces together. This one for U of T feels like it was fit together rather well because it's all about the Jinx. It's very simplistic and very easy to play out on the side of it.
And it goes back to kind of our discussion around DeafRef in the mid lane. You know, he had these really high carry pickups banned against him, things like that Veigar and the Mordekaiser, things that can really take over the game. But he's on Galio, he's on sort of support duty throughout, and that's just his willingness to play a bunch of different styles, do whatever he can to help this team win. One of the lone bastions of creativity out of this Toronto lineup that made top 8 last year with some of their, as you say, goon shenanigans. So as we load into the Rift for game number 1, it's going to be an exciting one. Michigan on your blue side, Toronto on your red side. I hope you see another 3 games, Rebel, I'll tell you that.
I really do too. These two teams are both talented as well. I don't think anything other than a best of 3 would truly show the kind of competition that these two are able to bring against one another. Because again, Michigan to me is a little bit favored. They're coming from the north. They're a very put together team. They have a fantastic coach in Julius. In fact, all of Michigan's coaching from top to bottom is kind of insane between them and MSU. Even Northern Michigan has some solid coaches as well. But beyond all of that, together, that to me is like the expectation, especially after, University of Toronto ended up in 4th place in the East as opposed to, top 3, something like that, which was a little bit of that pushing back in the other direction and being like, okay, I think Michigan's a little bit favored in this particular game, but U of T definitely did not show that inside of UPL a couple weeks ago. Definitely are a team to be feared in a number of different situations, and I'm hoping they get to show that to us today, if not even just take the series, because it's bound to be an exciting one, I think, especially if we get to this 30-minute mark, which UPL never got us there, right? We never got to 30 minutes of UPL, so we get to the late game team fighting, we get to see Siekomode versus the world. That's what I'm excited for.
And both of these teams, again, they were write-ins from the committee, but I think they both had, rather unfortunate paths throughout their conference playoffs. Michigan forced to run into MSU very early on and took a loss there to RBM and the rest of the squad up there. But they are a very confident team as well. They beat SLU in one of their, consolation matches, so to speak. And, that's a very tough opponent with some very top-tier players. And so this Michigan team really can prove that they can show their worth. And on the other side, Toronto got a bit of an unfortunate draw, having to go up against Harrisburg in that third place match, something that nobody was really expecting up in the East Division as well. So I think for both of these teams, they had a bit of unfortunate roads in the playoffs, but they're looking to try to right the wrongs here against each other right now.
Not to mention they ran into Western in semifinals, which is also a difficult role. So running into Western was also a very difficult situation to find themselves in. One way or another, though, we find our way onto the Rift. Everybody ready to go back and forth. I'm excited to see the two junglers. I'm keeping my eyes on them as being the playmakers for both of these teams. The Wukong pick intrigues me quite a bit for Oltan. I know you had made mention of my proper, I will note, terminology of moon shenanigans coming out from UOT from last year. And this is a little bit of a glimpse at something that they can do with their junglers, something they didn't do as much last year. Instead, it was a lot of the support shenanigans between DeafRef and their support from last year. And this year, it's taken up the mantle of their new jungler. So appreciation to Oltan being able to keep the legacy living for UOT there.
We'll be able to get this crab down bottom as well. Jouzef not going for, any aggressive, creative pathings on the Lee Sin that we so often see. Instead, going for a bit of a safer option. The full clear, hitting that level 4. Looks like he will opt towards a reset, as it doesn't look like there's much to work with here on this bottom side. Xayah, definitely a very strong lane, and they're going even here against Siekomode, which is definitely a good sign so far for Michigan.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, again, over the course of this entire collegiate season, we've had a little bit of back and forth. I know we talked about with this with RBM before. Oh, actually hanging out bottom lane.
Oltan dodges away there from the Sonic Wave, and it's a bit of a 1v1 fight on multiple fronts here. Ignite already ticked onto Siekomode, who's low on mana. Blade Caller doesn't do a whole lot, and Somä gets rooted up. Oltan gonna dash forward, and first blood into the hands of U of T. Siekomode picking this one up, and that will be it. 1 kill on the board for Toronto in the start of this game, and now Shamwwow going up into the top side. One more parlay will do. The Pirate picking up a kill in the solo fashion.
The GP early game coming in clutch for Shamwwow. He knows the champion kind of in and out, no matter the situation, which is really nice to see. Now, actually, I'm a little confused how he ended up with a pull and with a corrupting pot at the beginning of the game. Yeah, 5 of those. He hasn't taken it back yet, so maybe it's just a TP glitch or something like that. But something happened right there. One way or another, I want to go back to the bottom side play because top side we kind of missed a little bit of it. But Oltan ran into Jouzef as he was coming in for a gank onto Siekomode and onto blue, which would have worked out great had Oltan not been there and caught him out ahead of time, being able to use the W to distract him a little bit and got the better of the Lee Sin in the one-on-one. So props to Oltan being here at the defense of his bottom lane, preventing the early ganking from Jouzef, that playmaker for Michigan, and setting themselves off to a better play. This is supposed to be a counter lane for the Xayah. First kill definitely helps counter that.
Oh no, DeafRef in a whole lot of trouble. No mana on Omly, but that's going to be no problem. Jouzef getting onto the board.
Starting off plays into the mid lane, I always love watching somebody gang for a LeBlanc. Not only do you have the chains for setup and mobility and damage to be able to put into the opposing mid laner to help out your jungler, but also breaking a LeBlanc loose and letting them kind of run wild on the map, letting Omly start to roam and make effect elsewhere is a much more beneficial use of the LeBlanc's time than sitting in lane for 15 minutes waiting for first item and waiting for those opportunities to come about naturally by finding lapses in vision. If you can unnaturally break the LeBlanc out of mid lane, that's when this champion really starts to shine. That's where the star power starts to show up. And that, for me, is a great way to start things off for Omly in the mid lane. If the kill went onto him, it would have been even better, but obviously, you're fine with the Lee Sin grabbing it. It's an early game for your early game jungler. Make sure that he's going to be able to continue to abuse a lot of these lanes. Already found 2 ganks for himself now.
And it's really, really nicely done there by Michigan. This is a Galio pickup that's meant to neutralize the LeBlanc a little bit, but they were able to find the right timings and the right rotations for Somä to get up to the mid lane, as well as Jouzef to allow that kill to go through. And a little bit of a snowball can be unfolding here for Michigan. Keep our eyes down here on the bottom side, though. Remember, Siekomode now in the advantage down here with that first blood kill. Already has a new equipper compared to that Vamp Scepter of DGMaster. But now back to the mid lane we go. Jouzef again trying to go in onto DeafRef. Big damage coming out for the chains, and that's just the resonating strike finishing the job.
Not really an angle right there for the Justice Punch to come out from DeafRef to find a better way out. It doesn't want to burn the flash because it is so mobile. Really good from Oltan, who had come into the bottom side to look for a gank, ends up catching Jouzef, forces out him to go deeper, and maybe actually opens up for the dragon with the push on bottom side. As UOT, mid lane is getting attention, and I think warranted from the side of Michigan. They could trust in Omly. He's one of the veteran players, one of the returners, one of the best performers I think that Michigan has had over the course of both amateur, proving grounds, collegiate in general. So it's not really shocking to see them put him on something that has not only agency in the game, but then to put resources additionally into him to make sure he could use all of this kind of pressure he's got against Siekomode really effectively by giving him that early game resource.
Yeah, and big on the mid jungle for getting Omly into that spot. And that's another interesting point here for Michigan. You know, this is a team that did play a little bit in the PGCQs. They went into the open qualifiers, never made it to the main stage, but did put up some good fights against some really top teams. Actually taking a game off of Esports Prime specifically in that second OQ, who definitely did well in 2021 as a roster. So some good things to keep in mind. And also important to note that that was not their full roster that they have. Now everybody combined together, and they are now in a good spot. 3-1, 800 gold lead here for the Wolverines.
It's also worth as a quick shot at the Eastern Conference that they played against UT Scarborough, who is the #2 team out of the Eastern Conference, and did go 1-1 against them in competitive play in PG before they had their full roster as well. So, they've lost to U of T, one of the sides, but then the other U of T they've won against, so a bit of back and forth there. We can't really tell what's happening with Michigan. They're too close to Canada to actually consider themselves a Canada killer of any kind in this case.
It's a little too even. You can't. I don't think the dice rolls. Like, I don't know if the coin falls on either side at this moment. Kind of just in limbo at this point. Maybe the series will give us a definitive answer. It will be that Rift Herald picked up by Michigan. Jouzef's doing a good job getting pressure up on the top side alongside Shamwwow to get that objective and more potential for gold to open up. Especially since Michigan didn't really burn a lot of resources to pick that Shelly up.
Did not. Able to just snag that one away to continue this gold advantage. Wouldn't be shocked to see it go down in the mid lane if it's basically free for Jouzef to be able to do so. It's a very interesting setup because U of T aren't usually kind of familiar with this type of setup. They usually draft a lot more damage. Like you expect Oltan to have something kind of like Wukong, like Lee Sin, anything playmaking to begin a game like this. That's not shocking in the slightest. I don't think this is a crazy pick for him. The one I'm really kind of attributed to is the Senpai top lane Ornn, because both of us know Senpai as being somebody that even into the later runs that they had was picking damage, was picking a lot of kind of carry type top laners or damage oriented top laners. And we thought this was going to be a little bit of a skill check between he and Shamwwow on this day, where Shamwow's got a lot of experience, played for Michigan, went to ISU, and then came back for a little bit of time. But ultimately, like, Shamwwow is also a damage carry, also likes to play kind of like a leave me alone, I'm going to do my own thing up here, and that the two of them were going to interact a lot more. But instead, Senpai has opted for a bit more tankiness. So we're just like, we're not playing that game. Instead, we're playing for scaling, playing for teamfight around the rest of UOT. And we get to see, I guess, in full display whether Senpai is able to adapt to that strategy or not.
And for Toronto, they kind of have their two different options here. They can play towards the top side, put Senpai on things like the Kale, and try to get him ahead, or go towards Siekomode. And they've definitely chosen the latter here in this situation. And they've kind of made the plays around it as well. DeafRef and Oltan both making their way down towards bottom lane a fair amount, and Michigan is forced to match alongside him. Wave pushing in here for DGMaster and Somä. Jouzef in the area as well. Could proc the Rift Herald, wouldn't get a whole lot of value with it still at full HP, and you see DeafRef roaming down, which means that Michigan don't want to make any plays. They're going to take a little bit of a reset.
There's a bit of action so far on the map, but nothing has been so critical that it's made much of a difference. A 1k gold advantage, a lot of it is into the Lee Sin, who's been matching the farm of Oltan. We haven't really seen U of T come online fully yet. They're a 5-on-5 base team. They want to take team fights even from the very early stages of the game as much as they can, because they've got all this AoE and all this CC to work with to be able to apply against the side of Michigan. So I anticipate second Dragon, second Rift Herald definitely being opportunities where U of T should be trying to push for more than what they have so far. Oltan gets caught out. Nice flash gets him out of real danger there.
Oh, and flash over again by Jouzef, trying to get away from the taunt. Not going to do too much. Sonic Wave ends up missing the grand entrance from Somä, will yield nothing. DeafRef gets out safe.
little bit of hands checking right there, and I can appreciate Oltan was able to get out. That's Senpai who's going to fail that one.
Shamwwow in a lot of trouble. Didn't really need Jouzef's help, but hey, 150 gold extra onto the assist is always valued. Lee Sin making his presence known across the Rift. Michigan up 4-1. Maybe see some more pressure here with Shelly in tow. Jouzef gonna find out. Oltan, big damage onto the Lee Sin. Force pop the Cyclone, resonating strike right over, and the kick secures the deal. Jouzef on a killing spree.
And there we go. Michigan finally finds a way of attacking this map specifically. First off, Shamwwow doing much better. Senpai not looking very comfortable on the Ornn and getting just completely destroyed by the Gangplank at the beginning of the game. Is gonna find first tower without Rift Herald. He's got Rift Herald in his back pocket. They could, in theory, if they wanted to, shift LeBlanc and Somä up into this top side, shove Senpai completely further back, use the Rift Herald, grab inner tower for the Gangplank as well, and at that point, the game is over. Senpai is not actually accomplishing anything. Shamwwow is going to be able to drop too much damage into any kind of team fight that you got, and the game might actually just be lost at that point. Yeah. Instead, they don't decide this. They're going to go put the gold elsewhere. I don't know that I fully appreciate. I think Michigan could have put pedal to the metal right there, but nonetheless, Shamwwow incredible in this game, already taking a massive advantage.
I mean, that Rift Herald is expiring rather soon. If you take a look at the bottom left corner of your screen, Jouzef's going to have to place it right now. Yeah, probably mid lane. Get a couple extra plates. You already got the first tower, so having this extra value is definitely good. But now UOT going to try to respond with the rotation to the mid lane. Oltan, Siekomode, and Blue around here, so I'm trying to make sure not a lot of value is here. Omly actually in a decent amount of trouble here. Senpai popping the ignite. That's why you go unsealed spellbook. Senpai on the board.
Senpai able to pull a kill against the LeBlanc on the Ornn in the mid lane. A little bit of weird statement right there. They catch this crazy timer where it looked like Michigan, they just had to panic, throw the Rift Herald down in the mid lane. They had roamed up their bottom lane into the river. They had full control. They were ready for a team fight if the time were to come. Michigan just yields that over to the side of UOT instead. They're just going to give that up. Yep. They say, okay, we got more than enough on top side. We're okay losing the mid laner. We're okay losing the dragon. We're not playing your game. We're going to play our game instead. We've got a powerful Lee Sin. We've got an incredibly powerful Gangplank. If you want to take us late, that's fine. We don't care. We will fight you eventually. They will have to slow this down, I think, a little bit. The thing is, though, that like Siekomode isn't particularly powerful. That if the Gangplank continues and if LeBlanc gets onto like first, second item, gets into like Ludens, I think, especially into Siekomode, that is the breaking point where U of T have a lot of struggle trying to take the full-on team fight, 5v5 that they would look for.
Well, 2v2 opening up here. Glacial Fissure already used, maybe just to get DGMaster off the wave a little bit here. Not much follow-up, but in the top side, we see a bit of an engage. Ornn landing in onto Shamwwow, and DeafRef gonna flash forward, gonna be landing that stun as well. Oltan in with the Cyclone, and the Galio picks up the shutdown onto Shamwwow. 1-for-0 in the top side for UFT as they defend the bot lane as well.
There is more. Kick is going to come in from Jouzef, potentially, to get somebody back.
There's the Everfrost. Jouzef might just die, but he does so much damage. Conqueror proc, but the shutdown finally goes in onto Oltan. Nice juke out from Omly. He gets away from the searing charge, but I don't know if it's enough to save his life. He has a chains, tries to dash away from the taunt with the distort. Back he goes, and he is out safely. Some magician's work out of the LeBlanc.
Yes, but saying that this was a gorgeous play from Omly is maybe just like kind of capturing the very bare minimum of this play, because ultimately you got to shut down onto Gangplank and onto Lee Sin for basically nothing, and U of T gets to neutralize a little bit. The exchange of the push in mid lane for Shamwwow, which is quite nice. The push in the wave, deny a bit of minions, and be able to get a lot of damage into a couple of numbers here.
Shamwwow actually teleporting to the mid lane to try to push the tempo in onto the turret, and gets taunted up here by DeafRef, who makes his way down again to defend. So not too much really utilized there, just that summoner spell for some extra momentum in terms of getting the wave states in line, but Shamwwow maybe overstepping a little bit on this play.
This was the play right here. The Ornn ultimate catches him. He's going to be mostly dead. I was curious what had happened. Jouzef was trying to chase down Oltan, and they didn't need to press any further. They could have honestly just walked down into mid lane, pushed that in, taken another turret plate, and kind of salvaged a little bit of gold. Instead, Michigan are trying to push with more members. But the thing is, when you walk in one at a time, it's a bit of a problem. Siekomode is in no man's land. He does have support of Senpai.
Yeah, here comes Senpai though for the teleport.
Very
Soma's in a lot of trouble under the turret. There goes the searing charge. He has the battle dance to get away, but here comes the re-engage. Rocket dashed away from DGMaster, popping that Feather Storm. Senpai force pop the Bellows breath, but he is so low. Shamwwow takes him down, but here comes a re-engage. Oltan with a massive cyclone. Somä will go down. Glacial Fissure knocking up 2. What can DeafRef do? He's going to taunt up 2 onto the backline, and DGMaster is down. Now Jouzef in the middle of 3 members will take down the Jinx before falling. Numbers of enemies still in favor of Toronto, but the health bars are in Michigan's favor. Shamwwow reigning in havoc with the amount of auto attacks onto Blue. Pops the Unbreakable, able to get away. 3 for 2 in favor of Toronto, but what a fight that was.
really incredible. And I think ultimately, over all things, Michigan, even though they're down more members, like losing the gold in this situation, they're not done yet. Omly's going to try to kill. He gets one, and DeafRef's in no man's lane, so he's stuck here once again.
Here
no
we go.
help him.
Everfrost dodged away from Justice Punch. Can he do it? The taunt, the stopwatch. Can he buy enough time? He goes down. Oltan picks up another. How does DeafRef survive?
DeafRef has got to be the luckiest bird in the entire world. He was nearly a cooked goose, and instead he gets to dance his way back to the base. It's a play that, like, it looked actually winning for Michigan even after the initial engagement. You could see when the fight breaks into two directions, if Wukong is not on the side of diving the opposition, the damage isn't really there. Like, DeafRef can get into your backline, but it doesn't matter that much if everybody isn't low. So I want to point out a couple of moments in here. First off, getting caught out really sucks. Like, DGMaster had to walk out of this one, wanted to use the Featherstorm more effectively in this particular case, but ended up having to use it very defensively just to prevent cooldowns from coming in. This is where it looked good for Michigan. Then you see the dive happen on both sides. Jouzef on one side, but there's very low members for the Galio to be able to take advantage of on the other side of the fight, which is the only reason it goes well. If they're full health, Shamwwow just kills him, and there's not really much that you can actually accomplish, while Jouzef on the other side basically pulls 2 kills of his own volition. And at this point, I'm like, hey, Omly and Shamwwow have enough damage to be able to clean this. They nearly kill Blue on the back end of this play, just as the shield to be able to defend against the last parting bits of damage, which is why this looked good for Michigan, because I was like, hey, they won this fight. They had more damage. They just barely weren't able to get through the front line, but this is a scale-like option for them. They can wait. Only showed on the ward for a brief second. Blue wasn't able to catch it. And yes, they go for the dive, get punished. Oltan was able to show back up at the end of this fight and was able to find his way in to be able to punish everybody. Yeah, the aftershock was just enough denial of damage to keep him alive.
That is insane. We're on a knife's edge here in this game, Rebel. 2,500 gold lead for Michigan, but it does not seem like an advantage for either side. Third dragon spawned. It will be soul point for Toronto if they're able to pick it up. Senpai in the area, frontlining the hell out of this Michigan composition.
This is a game that we anticipated being broken on the early game. This is an early game advantage for Michigan, but maybe not big enough to kind of encroach upon the early team fighting prowess of UOT. They have to be fearful. Gotta keep Siekomode alive.
You gotta watch the assassination attempt. Put the cannon barrage on top of Siekomode. He might be in a bit of trouble. Here comes the GP ult. Only over to the backside. Watch Siekomode's health bar. Down to about half HP. And it will be Oltan securing the dragon. First casualty on to Senpai. The fight's beginning. Look at the damage though coming out from Toronto. They try to turn the fight around, but DeafRef is still at full HP. But Omly's untouched onto the backline. It's a double for Oltan. But Jouzef will pick up his own. DeafRef in a whole lot of trouble. He will go down as well. Michigan win the fight despite the dragon going over.
Massively winning for Michigan in the fight. The problem is they're now down to 3 dragons. We are one bit away, Mr. Grapes, from being in a position where Infernal Soul comes to the team fighting team, which is not what you want. I'll point out a couple of things. First off, terrain. Only gorgeous composition alongside his top laner. They put down this cannon barrage in a perfect position. Watch how it traps them in the pit, and Only, despite being on a ward, still is able to put a good amount of damage into Siekomode. If it weren't for Exhaust, I think he kills the Jinx right here, but the Exhaust barely keeps him alive because they got pinched into the pit. Now, the fight puts them into a bad position. Their front line had taken damage, their back line had taken damage, and there's too much there from Michigan. They've got a Gangplank in their midst. They've got all of this kind of through damage. The Feathers went through 4 members of the team. It's so much that they had to kind of get pinched into. Again, boxing them into the back of the pit, not letting them kind of get a situation in which they could dive and then use open space to utilize a bunch of this AoE CC. Perfect usage of a kind of spacing from Michigan in that fight to capitalize on it. Now, again, it's a trade-off of you got 4,000 gold lead, 5,000 gold lead that you're encroaching upon soon. You are 1 dragon from giving Infernal Soul away to a Jinx teamfight composition and a 6-kill Wukong. That is not a good position to be in, even if you're up gold.
I don't know about you, I was watching that fight again, and I thought that, you know, Toronto was in a good spot. You saw the Gore Drinker out of Oltan do so much damage, DeafRef as well, chunking out almost everybody on Michigan. The only person that was untouched was Omly, who somehow dodged my eyes and also the eyes of Toronto, seemingly getting in around, still at full HP at the end of the day, and Jouzef was able to secure the triple there. 7-2-1. This is the battle of the junglers that we were talking about here, Rebel. The newcomers really showing their worth in top 32.
Really, really big props to these 2 junglers. I'm loving what I'm seeing from both of them because, again, Jouzef, I heard from Julius and from all of Michigan, their players talked about it, how talented that he is and how much he really can develop as a player. I've even heard aspirations and levels to the level of like an LCS player, not even just an academy player, which is a very, very high praise from somebody as experienced as Julius inside of the field like this. And Oltan, I think somebody who slipped a little under the radar because UOT, again, 4 seed in the East, you don't typically look at the jungler as being somebody that's like, oh yeah, this guy's probably probably a stud, but he's showing off right now. The two of them combined for 13 of the kills in this game. Over half the kills in this game are belonging to just the junglers because of it, which I think is props to being able to find a couple of very young, talented junglers to throw onto these rosters in Collegiate.
Yeah, and they've been making the plays so much. I mean, they're both at 2 items. They're leading the team in kills, as you said. Just really great stuff. We might see some more plays here between them. A 1v1 duel, so to speak, but their mid laners are coming to re-engage. Jouzef procs the Conqueror, getting away here from that Everfrost. So just pressuring Oltan out a little bit. Michigan still in control despite the 3-dragon deficit. They're up a decent chunk of gold. Going for the sieges only. To be so careful about this LeBlanc here, Rebel.
Shamwwow is also a ticking time bomb because he's got the Trinity Force, the penetration from the Lord Doms. There's not a lot of members, and the problem is you get one barrel chain, one cannon barrage into the backline, and you hit the damage of this team, or you get through Oltan's health bar. Problems. Big problems. Yeah, there isn't enough armor in the world to really defend against a full build Gangplank when built properly, and so you do have the ticking time bomb of that as well. This is U of T. Moment I think that they have to strike is this dragon. They have to win the fight around the dragon. They have to get the Infernal Soul, and they can't bleed out anything at this time. Because if they lose another fight around Infernal Soul, I think it's entirely possible that Michigan takes them in a scaling game, says, hey, let's play for Baron, goes up 10,000 gold, and might actually have the ability to play the game to Elder Drake, win the Elder Drake because they're up so much gold, and then the Infernal Soul doesn't matter for U of T. That's possible. If U of T wins the dragon and doesn't lose the fight afterwards, doesn't bleed any additional gold out, doesn't give the Baron up, that's when this game gets a lot more interesting. That's when Michigan is starting to get pressed.
50 seconds, 45, sorry, until that soul spawns. Reset's coming through for Michigan, but it looks like Toronto's a little bit late. Teleports are available onto Senpai, but nobody else. This is a little bit dangerous here for Toronto if they want to secure the soul.
It really is. They're way pushed back. They might have to give themselves more time. It's possible what they're thinking right now is that they want an Infinity Edge on Jinx. And so that they wait through one dragon, it's a position that they're in where it's like, okay, we have to take the lesser of two evils. If we think they're going to Baron, there's no way. You gotta fight now. But I don't believe that they think that Michigan is going to Baron, especially with the setup they've got. Their consistent damage really is like Xayah, Lee Sin, like Gangplank is very strong as well, but they don't have a bunch of really good frontline to tank it either. So they're comfortable saying, okay, Michigan probably wants to play into us at Baron. So instead, they're willing to give up a dragon, willing to wait this game out a little bit longer.
They might try to fight here. Finally, the dragon spawned, and Toronto's in the area, but it's just burned way too quickly by Jouzef. Now, what can Toronto do? Look at the Cyclone! Here comes the Galio combo as well. Jouzef knocked up. Big stuns across the backline as the AD carry falls. Now we have to take a look at what Omly can do, but there's so hanky health bars that LeBlanc can do nearly nothing. A triple kill for Oltan onto the backside. Another one onto blue, and Somä will fall as well. A complete ace, a quadra kill for Oltan as Toronto turned the fight all the way back on its head.
And who would have thought? This is the team that wants the team fight. You're thinking, okay, if we pinch ourselves into the pit, it's tough for us to get back. So instead they say, okay, Michigan, you take it. We'll find a flank. And they got Oltan into the perfect position to get this massive Cyclone and this setup for Galio so they can play this fight in a very different way. Look at Oltan's entrance. He uses this, he backs out, and he just says, let's go for it. Pulls the Cyclone immediately. Ornn ult on top of it, the Galio ult on top of it. How many members died before they even hit the ground? There were 2 or 3 that went down so quickly in this fight. What are you to do if you're the side of Michigan? How do you counterplay in that particular circumstance? You really can't do it. They were anticipating there was going to be more fight. They thought they were going to be able to take it in smaller amounts of space in control. And when they were on the back foot, I don't think they were really ready for the Wukong ultimate. So now the gold gap closed a little bit by U of T. If they can get some more gold into the pocket of Jinx, get onto Infinity Edge, maybe that's the point that they're looking for to be able to take this dragon. Or they just continue fighting around it as much as they can, because obviously it worked out for them right there.
Mr. Earlfox, I regret to inform you that this is actually, your analysis was incorrect. This is not a Siekomode carry game. This is an Oltan carry game. Senpai hitting level 14, not upgrading the Gale Force. He upgrades the Goredraker of Oltan, knowing that he is the true carry in this spot. 3 completed items with the Kenpug Chainsword as well. 10 kills on to the Monkey King. Things are looking very, very good for him. And now, DeafRef might actually catch out Omly. That's a ton of damage. But now, Jouzef also here. The 2v1, so the situation is not good in terms of numbers for the Toronto mid laner. Rocket will come through. Now the question is, what can the collapse hold? Doesn't look like Toronto want to go for anything, even though Omly is low HP.
Really incredible start to a series right now. We're in game 1.
Game 1.
There might be 3 of these creeps. I need to start asking for psychological evaluations before I start these casting things to know that I'm ready, because this is just too much pressure for me to handle right now. That's the damage we're talking about. One barrel, one ultimate, didn't even tag him with most of the ultimate, and Siekomode's down 75% of his health. Game-changing Gangplank, truly.
He got the time to scale. We were talking about it in the first series. You pick Ornn, you get a free lane basically for your opponent, and Shamwwow has definitely capitalized upon that. The more click plays also completed to just get more barrels, more cooldowns down if you are this GP. And it's just so hard to really fight against the amount of the control that Michigan have in this composition. Of course, Toronto proved that if you find the right angles, you just go straight all the way down the middle. That can be the angle, but I think if these fights start to go extended with the gold lead that Michigan still has, they're in a good spot, even though they lost that last fight.
It's about finding a way for Michigan to position their champions where you can bait an engagement from U of T, where you don't tag the important members. I think at this point, you don't really care about anybody except for Shamwwow. As long as Shamwwow is alive and capable of punishing the engagement from U of T, that's how Michigan ends up winning out a fight like this, because you can shred through a number of different members, including the very tanky ones, with just a couple of barrel chains here and there, the ultimate as well, and it opens up space potentially for Omly to go diving, Jouzef to go diving as well, where they don't have to worry too much about the Xayah Rakan combination. And now you can see Shamwwow, even to this moment, split pushing, putting gold into his pocket, being this massive damage dealer potentially for Michigan to fight with when the time comes, because they need to find a way to deny U of T the ability to fight them again and again, over and over, when they keep going for this objective. Because there comes a time where if U of T jumps them at the right time and win out a team fight, they get Infernal Soul on top of it. And again, the scaling's there for Michigan, but it's really tough to overcome an Infernal Soul, especially when a gold lead and a team fight is this easy to execute on Toronto's side.
Oltan in trouble. Oh, the Sonic Wave misses. That would have been a bit dangerous if you are that Wukong. I don't even know if we mentioned it over this cast level, but after that fight, Toronto picked up the Baron, and they were able to crack open all the way to the mid inhibitor turret. So back again to the pit we go here. 25 seconds until that Soul Drake can potentially spawn. And again, Michigan is the one with the priority around the pit.
They do. But again, this is preferential for University of Toronto, as we saw in the last time, because it allows them to try to put a diver in the right place, to get the Galio in the right place, the Ornn into a right place, and to cluster all these members together to use all this big AoE kind of CC to set up for Siekomode or Oltan to put in a bunch of damage.
Somä dodges away from the knockup just barely, but here comes the engage. Ornn actually goes backwards, but he will be able to use it to knock up Shamwwow. Can the engage come through? Flash away from the GP, and now all of Toronto is collapsed upon him. Here comes Jouzef, but look at the damage coming out from the Cyclone on the backside. Hero's entrance finds two, and that's already two down for Michigan. They're going to get one back onto Siekomode, but I think the tanks will do enough to finish the job. DeafRef has so much damage onto this backside as well. A double kill onto Jouzef. What can him and Shamwwow do? He's still alive, but Oltan's at full HP. A triple kill again for the Monkey King. And Toronto in the fight. And Toronto get the soul. Oh no, Jouzef, wait. I might have spoken too soon here. 3,000 HP. Jouzef. He has potential to steal. Sonic Wave over the pit. He doesn't get it. Just a little bit too late for the young jungler. Shut down into the hands of DeafRef. And Toronto get Infernal Soul.
Ridiculously close. Margin so close here, but U of T once again spends so much resource into Siekomode in this fight. And maybe like you had said, this really does be a Wukong carry angle for Oltan the jungler. Look how they push into the pit. I was worried they burned so much actually getting to this point that things were going to get scattered. Siekomode continues to put in autos, and Somä almost goes down. Look where Siekomode is at. He's kiting to the back of the pit. They find damage on a couple of members, and they go so far into the pit just looking for this ADC. Shamwwow can't put out barrels. Shamwwow isn't able to put out damage into this big cluster of tanks because there's just no way to accomplish it. So Oltan just gets to pick them off as they're trying to flee the pit on the back side of things. It is a gorgeous setup that somehow the main damage dealer in this Wukong basically got to sit there for free and not do anything until the end of the fight when things came through. Incredible stuff.
It's hard to fight this if you're Michigan, because you know you're talking about how, oh, this Jinx is going to be the one to carry the game, but the Wukong, actually, Oltan is the one doing most of the damage here in this fight. Crucially enough, actually, I want to mention DGMaster was on the wrong side of the fight throughout that entire time. He really didn't have a chance to backline alongside his team and was barely able to get much damage across throughout the entirety of that fight. As we head back to live right now, looks like more action's about to come through. Ornn will miss. Bit of a field goal here, but watch Oltan. He gets charmed up, and the Cyclone will still land in onto two. Somä forced to get away. Jouzef still tanky onto the front line. DGMaster untouched for the moment, but it will be the Lee Sin going going down. 4v5 for them onto the map for University of Toronto. So Omly looks over to try and get this assassination, but there's really too much health bars on the Toronto side. Omly can really only take down Siekomode at this point.
Oltan is pretty low, so there is that to consider. A Gold Drinker is going to be necessary in the future to hit onto multiple members to really find it. Wow, Omly realizes the stress that he is under, trying to find a pick onto Wukong.
DeafRef, oh no, Omly, he's in so much trouble, he goes down. That's the Infernal Soul Galio, one-shotting the LeBlanc. And now DGMaster's in so much trouble as well. Rocket to seal the deal. A double kill into the hands of DeafRef. And now Toronto really has a numbers advantage. Baron on the table, likely will be able to get that full control around it.
And it looked like such an incredible early game. It looked like an opportunity for Michigan to kind of recant for some of the things that happened only a couple of weeks ago and to represent the 5th seed as the Northern Conference gets to continue to show up. Shamwwow's getting a gun out too!
DeafRef, this is a Galio, man! What is he doing? So much damage onto the main carry here for Michigan. Shamwwow goes down. Baron secured by Oltan and Siekomode. And Toronto holds complete control over this game.
This is such a tough situation now for Michigan. Not only is this a perfect team fighting scenario that's so much easier to play out, they didn't even need necessarily Siekomode to be on a bunch of gold because Oltan popped off so hard, but now everyone's doing damage. Infernal Soul makes it so that no matter who it is that's hitting you, they are hitting you hard. You can see DeafRef built Rabadons, now is doing an absurd
he's gonna do it again.
Somä gonna do it again.
He dashes away from the Everfrost. He will be able to survive with the Battle Dance. Omly is 3 levels down. This is the supportive pick. He's also carrying. Everyone's carrying on this team.
Everybody has to carry. In a team fight like this where you've got so much frontline, so much CC, and you've got an Infernal Soul, everyone does damage, everyone wins the fight if they're still alive. Michigan has to generate a situation in which they can do damage to all the members of the team, cluster them together, and put a barrel into everybody, and it just doesn't happen. Shamwwow and I able to find it right there, found it in his Senpai a little bit. The dive over the wall from Oltan was expecting a little bit better of a Cyclone coming out right here. And this was the bounce back and forth that led to a little bit of a good positioning coming out. The pick onto Jouzef was kind of what led to the Baron buff going down. But ultimately, again, these team fights are really hard to infringe on if you are Michigan. From the beginning of the game, that was going to be true, and they weren't able to masterfully craft a way to never have to worry about it. They weren't able to find themselves in a position where the team fight didn't matter, and instead, it was the generation of these 5-on-5s that Toronto really used to turn this game completely on its head. It didn't matter that they were down 4,000 gold. If you've got this CC and you've got damage in any character to be able to carry through a fight, that's all that was needed. They're up 3,500 gold, but it feels like a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, definitely so. And I think this is where the late game composition starts to unfold for Toronto. Omly just tickling blue on this backside, looking for some angle into the main carries for Toronto. But the inhibitor has been cracked open. Siekomode now finally unlocked here, has the shields as well. So we'll be able to heal up rather nicely as he dishes out the DPS. Omly still in a lot of trouble. DeafRef just bursting him down. One combo is all it takes to send him to half HP. Can't really say much on the other side. Here we go. This could be the end of the game here. There comes Siekomode with the Gale Force forward. Jouzef has to do something, has to have the miracle play. He kicks Siekomode, but right back into his own team. And DGMaster can't do anything about it either. Flash forward from DeafRef, a double kill onto Siekomode. And that is game number 1. That's how it'll end. The early game worked in Michigan's side, but Toronto prevails and takes game 1 of the best of 3.
Incredible stuff from Toronto right there. Being able to show up in game number 1 against Michigan, who, again, I think a lot of our desks thought that they were going to be favorites. It was going to be at least a close series that was favored slightly to Michigan. But here they are in game 1 showing pretty dominant fashion, showing a composition that is not goon shenanigans at all.
No.
It is just complete. It's complete across the board. Again, the lack of magic damage didn't really hit them because eventually the Galio was doing more than enough. The Infernal Soul locking from all of their dragon stacking paid off incredibly by the end of the game because that's what let them leverage to those big 5-on-5s. That is the benefit of early dragon stacking and early taking of that, because then you can control when the enemy team is around in one cohesive place. You know all 5 of them are showing up to that dragon to make sure you don't get that powerful soul, and it meant that they could generate what they wanted, which in the end was those big 5-on-5s that ended up turning this game completely on its head. Michigan had a 5k gold advantage before that moment, and after that, I think both of us were under the assumption that at that point, U of T was winning. They just had complete control of the game from that point forward.
And it's really interesting because, you know, some of our expectations for this series was that Michigan was the team fighting team. They had the front to back. They're able to play it out nicely. But when you have things like a LeBlanc, like a Xayah that are more, single target damage, not necessarily really high DPS, especially onto some of the tanky frontline members of Toronto. Really hard for them to do a lot of work, and it looks like for Toronto, the frontline did more than enough to not only protect Siekomode, but just kill the entirety of the Wolverines as well.
They did. To me, it was a couple of things because Toronto came out here with a much better game plan than I think they would have wanted. I don't think they were expecting them to come out with this cohesive of just a pure team fighting composition because of the way that the series had gone previously. So now it's back to the drawing board. I don't know if this was a little bit of a sucker punch from Toronto where they say, okay, we will take you in one game in a team fight, and from that point, we're going to leave you wondering. Or if this is the consistent strategy that they come back to, believing that, Siekomode or whoever it is inside of the team that's popping off can full carry this team from basically the bottom to the end of the game, where they're able to take it against Michigan. That's up to Michigan to decide because they're the ones now on the chopping block down one game in the series.
Yeah, well, who was presumably maybe the favorites here in this matchup. Again, down to the wire here in game number 2. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Dylan and the desk are going to break down what happened in that game number 1.